Hello again, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the Noble Father podcast. Today is September the 9th of 2024. For whatever reason, on my notebook, I was writing August. Just brain lapse. About to, start the week. Mondays are a joy. Well, if you're joining us for the first time, my name is Theophilus. I am your host for the podcast. I also am the main owner-operator of the Noble Father group, which is a membership community now of intentional, purposeful, present fathers. And I want to make sure that I am, I say this on the podcast, is that I'm going to try my best to make these episodes about 20 minutes in length. I want to shorten them. I don't want to go too long. I kind of noticed that, the listenership falls once I go past 25 minutes and I don't enjoy, people just getting half of the message right. And so, if you find yourself here for the first time, this is really a work of passion, one in which I am as an imperfect father and not the noble father, that I'm just as imperfect as the next person. I'm also a work in progress myself. And so, if you find yourself here and wondering, oh man, I can never be at that level or whatever, know that I am not the perfect father. I am not the prototypical successful father. That being said, it's not that I'm not doing the best and trying my best to be that. And so today, as we share about, on the podcast, I want to highlight something, that happened this past week. Yesterday, pastor at our church was celebrated for 20 years of service at our church, and he's still going strong. And, something that's not lost on me is that he was 38 when he started his ministry, from going from a car salesman, a really good car salesman, to being a pastor of our community, being a leader of our flock. That was 20 years ago. And, for those that don't know, I am 38 this year. And there's, tears were coming off my face. Like I was in this very emotional place watching him being celebrated and given a standing ovation, and being celebrated by his wife, by his oldest son, and if his father was there, would have been celebrated just the same. And if I live to be that way in my own life 20 years from now, man, I'd consider that a great success. And I've let him know that. He's such a humble guy, and so yeah, Dwayne, thank you for your service. Thank you for what you've contributed to my life, and Noble Father would not be possible without you as well. And so, very, very much grateful for your presence and your leadership in my life. This week, as I think about what the topic is going to be, I was in the washroom earlier, and some of the best podcast ideas and things that I've come up with on this podcast, or that God has given me, has come from the bathroom. And think what you like. Hopefully you just get a giggle out of that. This morning as I was in the bathroom, an idea came to me of talking about, what are my top 3 tips for being a father? And one in which, I'm very proud of my children. I'm very proud of of who they are, of how well behaved they are, and just how loving I see they are, and how playful they are, how accepting of others they are, and it's my pride and joy to be able to share some of these tips with you. So I kind of took down some notes about what are top 3 things, and I'm giving a bonus thing at the end as well. These are things that you've probably heard me talk about on the podcast before, and one in which that I just want to reiterate over and over again, because these are the things that I've contributed to who my children are today. These are things that I practice on the daily with my children to make them who they are today. I have no shame when I go into public with my children. There is no incongruence of who they are at home and who they are here, out there. I like to think that, at home it's a very extreme, case, because they're comfortable here, and, this is where their heart is. But when they're outside, also, it's a representation of what happens at home. It's a microcosm of what it is at home, and being consistent in both those things in both those areas is very, very important to me, and to my wife as well. And so one of the things that, I can't be a good father without a good mother also, right? And so my wife and I, it's a very much a teamwork, it's a collaboration. It's not, more on my part or more on her part. We all have our individual areas and expertise, and also what she is good at, I am not good at. What I am good at, she is not good at. And there's things that I can teach that she cannot teach. And there are things she can teach that I cannot teach. And so that is very important to understand. That isn't one of the tips, but just know that it's very hard to raise a son as a mother. It's really hard to raise a daughter as just a father, a single father. You need to have that, the partnership, the collaboration. And that is important. Unity is very important in that role. If you're listening to this and you're a single father or a single mother, it is a challenge. Not that it's impossible, but it is a challenge. And I think that, I don't know the circumstances of the relationship or how you ended up in the predicament that you are in, but God intended for that to be done together. He didn't intend for that to go sideways or, there's many reasons, not just divorce. There could also be a death or a sudden death or passing of a spouse that could lead to that. It is important to do it together. And that is what I firmly believe. So my number one tip, really, this really, it's everything. It hinges on, all the rest of it hinges on this one principle. And that's something you'll hear on my podcast, that I'll say a lot, is presence. Presence is so important. Being present is so important. If you're not present and you're somewhere else, well, then you might as well not even be here. You might as well not even be there. Being present it doesn't matter what you provide for your children. It doesn't matter the fun that you bring if you're not present, right? You can give them toys that they can play with them by themselves. And if you're not present, then I don't know how they really enjoy it. I know growing up for myself, I wanted my dad to be around more, and I wanted him to be present, and he wasn't. And so, and he wasn't as much as I wanted. Maybe that's the right way to put it, is he wasn't as present as I would have wanted. And that was a very difficult thing for me. And that's why when I was growing up at a very young age, I knew I wanted to be a present father. I was very specific about the father that I wanted to be. I knew in my heart that there was this hole that I was missing, and a present father would have really, really filled that. I've come to reconcile that my dad was out really being a superhero to a lot of people, and that's it's difficult to swallow. Obviously, I would have loved to have him around more, but there's a lot of people out there that also needed my father, and so that's something I've reconciled. So number one is presence. That is, above all else, the most important thing. So number two, and I'm going to fly through these because, I can get very wordy about the things that I follow and talk about. Number two is consistency. And something that I see very often is a lack of consistency. And I'd encourage you, if you are, to be very conscious whenever you're out in public, to watch parents, how they lead their children at a playground or even just at a restaurant, just in passing. I want you to see how consistent they are. I've seen time and again, parents like, oh, don't do that. But then, later on the kid does it again and there's no consistency. The kid knows that you are not consistent. Your word means nothing, right? You can get upset for a few times. Maybe the first 2 or 3 times you are upset and saying, about as consistent as 2 or 3 times. But then they do it again. And for whatever reason, distracted or away, and suddenly, there's no consistency, right? And I've seen times before where they've looked and they're doing it again, and yet they don't say anything for some reason. Now you can see how presence leads into that, right? If you're not present, right, in the moment suddenly you're living somewhere else again, you're not there again. You've lost the opportunity to be consistent with your children. So for myself, with my children, I try to remain as consistent as I can. When I see something that I know that could be an area of correction, I ask them usually of like, what is Dad going to say in this situation, right? One of the things that I've been trying to reiterate for my son is like his belongings. So when he got baptized last year, we gave him as a celebration of it, we gave him a knife. We gave him a gift, and young boy, 8 years old, getting his first knife, that's a really big deal, but it's also a really big responsibility. And I've been trying to be very consistent in telling him, hey, you need to take care of your things. These are your belongings. These are nobody else's. You lose it and somebody takes it and hurts themselves with it. Whose fault is it? Your fault, right? This is your thing. Recently, we went out and he I forgot what we were doing. I think we were going swimming or something, and he put his knife and a flashlight that I gave him as well somewhere, and we'd lost it. So for the longest time, I was stressing out over it, just like, where's this knife? Like, where is it? Can't find it in the house. And just constantly just telling him, hey, like, this is your thing. You lost it. You need to go find it. And eventually I found it. It was in one of the bags that we had carrying with us, and gave it back to him and said, look, this is yours. You need to take care of it. This isn't only a lesson for now. This is a lesson for the future as well. I am teaching you right now so that you don't forget this, right? One day you're going to have your own possessions. Maybe one day you're interested in guns and you have your own guns. You need to take care of your own things. These are important to you. If somebody steals your gun and goes out and commits a crime with it, whose fault is that? It's your fault. You didn't take care of your gun. You need to take care of your things. And so being consistent in that is very important. So that's in teaching, right? Teaching my children how to be children, I'm not teaching them to be children. I'm teaching them to be adults, teaching them to be mature human beings. So you need to be consistent in that, right? It's not respond this way because we're in public and then respond this way whenever I'm at home. It's respond this way at home as I do in public, and vice versa. It's the same thing. Be consistent in everything that you do. Don't just do it because of the image that you present. I'm very serious with my children, and my wife will tell you that. I'm very serious with my children. I'll tell them consistently what I feel and what is wrong. And you know what? It's amazing because they know right away. My children, whenever somebody offers them candy, or even a kid who gives them candy, like the friends that they know gives them candy, they don't immediately just go and open it and eat it. They know to come and ask us. They know to come and ask for permission. This is from consistency comes these habits. They know and understand. Both my children, they know to not just go and eat something that they're not supposed to, or if they haven't gotten permission from us for. And it's not like there's punishment or anything that we do that gets them to be like this. They just know in their heart that they are under our leadership, and they need to seek our permission and consent. Consistency in your example, right? Consistency in your example as a father is that you're not just living this life and that's it. You have an audience that's constantly watching you. Being consistent in the way that you act also affects your children. They see it, right? You can't be one way here and then be one way at somewhere else, right? You need to be always consistent and remain constant in that. In your leadership as well, you need to be consistent in your leadership. You can't be wavering here. You can't be, and I'm not saying that I'm doing these things perfect. I'm always catching myself, always making sure that the optics of what I am doing for my children, for them to see, is it consistent with who I am? And whenever I overstepped in that situation, I need to be able to make amends and go and apologize to my children whenever I'm wrong. The other day, my daughter wasn't eating well. She wouldn't finish her rice. And I've been trying to teach her that, hey, you eat equal parts rice, equal parts meat, equal parts vegetable in one bite. And eventually you'll finish all your food. But if you eat all your meat and all your vegetables and then you leave your rice, well, you got nothing to eat. There's really no excuse for you not to be able to finish your rice. This is how you eat. And for me, this is a teaching of how to eat at the table. But also, if we ever get invited to a friend's place, I don't want to have to teach in that moment. You should be able to teach at home right away how to act in other people's presence, right? Change the context and teach them from that place. And so in teaching her how to eat her rice properly, is that it's to teach her to eat properly in other people's presence as well. And I flew off the handle. I got really, really upset. And, she's been throwing, these tantrums and these meltdowns, and turned around and she stomped and started to scream. And I just lost it. I threw my chopstick on the table and raised my voice and completely lost it. I was really, really, really upset in that moment, and just stood there and just started to really berate my daughter. And my wife stood up, and, my daughter was hugging her, and I was just telling her, like, you're lucky that I didn't, that we don't spank you, and that your mom, held me back from those things, growing up. You're very lucky and all this stuff. That was the wrong approach, and I shouldn't have done that. And, to go back in leadership and be consistent in apologizing to her whenever I did wrong. If I ever find myself in a place where I do wrong again and I choose not to apologize or, get up all in my head about it, right? I've lost that consistency, and this affects her. Tip number 3 is continuity. Right. And what do I mean by continuity, right? It's a continuation of legacy, knowing that in my mind, right, that there is a passing down of the torch, right? From me to the next generation, I get to move that forward. I get to pass that torch forward. So, and everything that I do with my children, knowing that there is continuity of legacy, and also I get to give that emphasis to my children. I get to show them what it means to live eternally. What does that mean with eternity in mind? The actions that we take, some might think that they're very temporary. They're really not temporary. They'll really send ripples through generations, right? What we know of sin is also generational, is that it can carry through bloodlines. It can go through generations of people. And then that's the other side, is that if you're not careful, is that you can perpetuate things that are harmful, perpetuate things that results that are not good for your family, which means that every single action has a result, has a reaction, right? Just like E equals MC squared. Every action has its reaction. And so if you don't have that continuity, if you don't continue pressing in with positivity or in the right direction, you're going to end up in the wrong direction. And that's the dangerous thing. As fathers, I feel like a lot of them don't really think about things beyond, with eternity in mind. It's like, oh, this job right now, it's comfortable. But it's also stressing me out, and she's not willing to do anything about it. Dude, there is that has eternal consequences, how you lead in that regard. And so if you don't take the action, if you don't move forward in that, you're not gonna, what kind of results are you expecting, right? And then you get mad at God because you didn't take action and you didn't take your way out. Like you've lost it. And that's also important because, that is a legacy we're leaving behind, is your example is something you leave behind for your children. There needs to be continuity of legacy. I mean, you need to show your children how life is done. And I guess the last thing, most important thing, not the most important thing, but one of the most important things, is something you hear us talk about a lot, is intentionality, right? When I think about intentionality, I think of, this concept that I learned in school called actus reus and mens rea. Actus reus is the guilty act itself. And then the mens rea is the mind, is the intent of the action, right? Because you can't have, if it's just the action, and you don't have the mens rea, then it's not a, let's just say it's not a first degree crime, right? If you acted but you weren't thinking, let's just say it's a crime of passion or a reflex action, right? That, somebody touches your shoulder and you had this reaction to throw an elbow back and you hit the person on the nose and the person dies, let's just say, right? You've lost the mens rea. You weren't thinking of the intent to kill somebody, but you ended up killing somebody. That is a different thing from if I premeditated or I thought about it and I didn't like this person and I have resentment and I'm holding on to it and then I kill the person. Intentionality is the act, is the mens rea portion of the action. When I think about mens rea and actus reus, right, or the action, right? What is the etymology of action? The origin of the word action is a cause or grounds for a lawsuit. So interesting, right? Action is originally defined as a cause or grounds for a lawsuit. And this goes back all the way to 1600th century. Action was used in ways that meant noteworthy action. And so you can imagine what this instills in the lives of our children. Action is very important. You can't just speak with words and not follow up with actions. And then, when it comes to the mindset, right, the mens rea of the mind, right, the etymology of mindset is that which feels, wills, and thinks. The intellect, memory, remembrance, state of being remembered, thought, purpose, conscious mind, intellect, and intention. And that's, if you're not intentional about how you live and how you walk in your life, your children are not going to be intentional in the way they walk. They're going to see how unintentional you are. And, even just being a father, right, to my son, he gets to see dad be intentional, and he gets to see what is the model of a father, right? And how he should act in his life when he's a father. He's already told me he wants to be a noble father. Pride and joy. Like I just, those are words that you want to hear. And for my daughters, for her to know what it is to have a good father for her children one day as well, right? The type of man to find, right? I care about my grandchildren. I might not have them yet. I don't know what they look like, but I care very much for their upbringing as well. I want this to be a generational legacy for them, right? I want them to have a present father. I want them to have good upbringing, right? And this starts with us. This starts with us right now. And it's important for them to see. And it rubs off, man. Like it's amazing how much it rubs off. Friends that we have that are that have kids, you can see the difference. There's nothing to hide. You can see the difference in upbringing. You can see the results of a family. There's nothing to it leaves nothing to the imagination, right? It's like a test, right? Put it to the test. Put it to the ringer. If you've trained, you'll make it through, right? If you haven't trained, well, you'll slow down and you'll see where you lie in the pack. It's very obvious, glaringly obvious. And so take these four things: presence, consistency, continuity, and intentionality. Think about how you lie, where you lie in these areas, in these domains. How present are you? How consistent are you? How continual are you? How much continuity are you bringing to your roles? And also, how intentional are you, right? Are you doing it in the presence of other people? Only in the presence of other people? Are you doing it whenever you're by yourself even, right? Integrity is a huge thing, right? Doing right even when nobody's watching you, that is consistency. That is integrity. That is intentionality, right? And that brings presence to everything. And so, thank you for joining me for this podcast. If you're looking for a community of men you want to grow around, fathers to grow around, we have a weekly meetups. We also have retreats. We're planning one for next year already in Texas. It's going to be amazing. This is really what we're all about. And so if you're listening to this right now and you're thinking, oh, I don't know what this community is all about, come take advantage of a trial that we have for newcomers to 10 meetups, see what we're all about, connect with your fellow fathers from all over the world, realize that they're all going through the same thing you're going through, and find support for the things that you're going through. If you need advice, you can get advice. If you don't, you just want to be heard, that's all you have to do. If you want to just listen, you can come and do that as well. And you can find that information in the link. I'll post that into the video. And hey, feel free to share this with fathers that you know. This may benefit so many people. And I'm thankful that you're here joining us. And hopefully you guys come away and have a great week through everything that's happening. Where am I going with this? Anyways, don't forget that we are not promised tomorrow. So be present and stay noble. Bye for now.